a bit hands off with Sean O'Brien being more Republican friendly, because look, I'm not a member of the Teamsters. You know, I'm in SAG-AFTRA, but I'm not a member of the Teamsters. I can't speak to what the rank and file want from their leadership. And Teamsters have traditionally been a bit more conservative, right, than other unions like the UAW or SEIU. It has a higher percentage of white workers, trucking, freight, warehouse work, etc. And so they're more likely to support Trump for reasons that are about, you know, not related, frankly, to his labor politics, because we know that the Biden administration was a massive improvement on that issue over Donald Trump. And so, like, I have an understanding that, you know, O'Brien has to represent his members in a way and is a politician because he has to get a majority of their support to continue to lead the Teamsters. But this was just inexcusable. And there were a lot of people in the labor world just saying, holy crap.
A lot of Teamsters.
And a lot of Teamsters saying, this is beyond the pale. Here is Sean O'Brien on Fox News being asked about Trump's labor secretary nominee, and he kind of reverses his position, but at the, she reversed her decision on right to work in the PRO Act, because she needs to get confirmed by a bunch of Republicans, and they don't like the fact that the PRO Act would have banned right to work, I believe, which makes it right to work laws are horrible for unions in this country. They make it basically illegal to require workers to pay union dues, which is at the core of union power. It guts their financial resources and their density, and it also makes it less likely for people to join, because they're like, why would I join this organization if it's not going to be basically on my behalf, providing me with benefits, care, etc.
Yeah, and Chavez de Reamer here was, when she was originally floated, a number of senators, including mine in North Dakota, John Hoeven, who is a banker, who is the son of a banker, said, I'm a right to work guy. And so I don't know if I can support Chavez de Reamer, and we've seen Chavez de Reamer's principles on that are easily thrown overboard.
So here's Fox Business asking him about that.
Well, we'll see, because maybe there's a little bit of Republican resistance to her nomination. She was a congresswoman from Oregon. She's got a pedigree that unions, I think, would probably appreciate. She's the daughter of a Teamsters member. She co-sponsored the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, supported UPS workers' right to strike, supported raising working standards, and fought to keep jobs from going overseas. But the one thing that at least Senator Rand Paul was hung up on was the clause in the Protecting the Right to Organize Act that would potentially see right to work in states be overturned. So he questioned her on that. Listen to this.
I fully, fairly, and support states who want to protect their right to work. I have said that to every senator that I have visited.
So you no longer support the aspect of the PRO Act that would have overturned state right to work laws?
Yeah, there were so many parts.
That's a yes?
Yes.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a couple things. That's been Senator Paul's agenda. Every chance he gets, he wants to introduce national right to work, which we do not support at all. We don't support right to work at all. We understand it's in the majority of the states out there. But that PRO Act, as it was never voted on, she supported it, she co-signed it, never voted on. But there is an opportunity to work bipartisan. I'm working with senators like Josh Hawley to come up with a form of the PRO Act that may not include that. There's been a lot of talk that if there is an issue with right to work, it should be done on a state level, not on a national level. And look, that's the beauty of having conversations with people from the other side, where you can collaborate and actually find out what works for that state, what doesn't work for it, but more importantly, what's going to work for the American worker.
So you support the president's nominee for labor secretary. What's your broader view on?
That's it. So he was nervous there a little bit, but look at how, it was unambiguous for the National Right to Work Committee. Everyone is feeling the heat on right to work today. Even Sean O'Brien acknowledges that right to work may be what works best for some states. this isn't, I don't know who funds the National Right to Work Committee, but that is a union busting organization, and that is inexcusable. I mean, Right to Work is responsible for the gutting of our union density. In the 1960s, our union density was like in the 30s. Now we're out at 10 to 11%. And a big part of that is that a majority of states in this country, 27, have right to work laws, which really make it much more difficult to organize. To have the leader of one of the largest unions in the country say that and reverse his position is just completely insane. And that was one of the most important parts of the PRO Act. One of the most important parts. And he's essentially just saying, we got to work bipartisanly. And I'm sick of hearing about his bromance with Josh Hawley. Like, what has Josh Hawley ever done for working people and for unions? We're giving credibility to the aesthetic of some right-wing populist that has no there. It's just about the vibes. And like, to have a union leader endorse that is just beyond the pale. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a weakness masquerading as independent streak. It is. They do have an issue with rank and file not liking Democrats. We can get into how justifiable that is historically. But there's a video they put out in 2020, Bradley, if you can put that up there, which is maybe a better statement on right to work than what was delivered on Fox News there by Sean O'Brien.
Over the past decade, some lawmakers have fought to curb the rights of workers, to join together to fight for fair wages, better benefits, and a voice in the workplace. Right to work, they say, is good for business. But the policy is a ruse. For workers, it is merely the right to work for less. This November, working Americans must exercise their own right to send these lawmakers packing. Go to www.teamstersvote.com and learn more about where the presidential candidates stand on union rights. Let's make sure 2020 is the year.
Yeah, that was in 2020, but much better explanation than what Sean O'Brien said there. Thoughts, fellas?
I mean, he's continued to prove his critics and naysayers right with these horrible sort of, at the very least, public appearances.
Right. And he claimed that Kamala said, "We'll win with or without you," which I have heard it was a complete mischaracterization of that conversation. So.
I mean, I don't know about that, but I think the Dems did fumble the bag.
He said it to Tucker Carlson, and there's been no corroboration.
Yeah.
I mean, people had no problem throwing her and her campaign under the bus for everything else. So, I mean, if she said this would definitely have come out.
It would have, yeah.
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 I mean, I think being overly conciliatory on right to work is being, overly conciliatory on the right to like organized labor in general. And given the historical number of assaults on people organizing, it's just not the time to be like giving any kind of credence to the idea that, well, some states, it's just not right for people to be able to organize effectively as a labor force, because that's right for every state. It's right for every worker. If anything, we need to be expanding those rights to be more inclusive of undocumented workers in the country, not like, conceding that, well, maybe Alabama just doesn't need labor unions because people down there are they're poorer, so they're less deserving of rights, or it's harder for businesses to turn a profit there, so they should be able to exploit their workers. Like, what is the justification for right to work in some states versus other states? Like, that is not just an obvious handout to business. I mean, next they'll be like, oh, some states like child labor is right for those states. So some states just don't have as many able-bodied adults, so maybe we need to lower the age of working to 12. They are doing that already.
Yeah, doing that in Arkansas. It was Arkansas, I think, right? Is that where Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the governor? I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yep. But they overturned. They basically removed paperwork requirements for child laborers because they want to be able to use specifically undocumented child laborers where they don't want to have that documentation. They don't want to have a paper trail. And what do you know? Those are some of the same exact states that have right to work laws, the South, and it's the hardest to organize there.
And and it's always industries that are especially brutal, right? Last I heard it was kids working in a slaughterhouse, and it was this is exactly what we need, Upton Sinclair in the jungle, but for children, a children's version.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a good Dustin Costello, who's a Teamsters member who writes for Jacobin occasionally, had a good piece in Jacobin, A Return to Gompers, the subhead being they got rid of it. Basically, this is a sign of weakness, and I think he also released something in Unheard recently for people who want a Teamsters perspective critical of O'Brien's approach here. I would direct you there.
Maddie Moron, this is a structural weakness of American business unionism, a form of trade unionism in which O'Brien's strategy is a normal one. That's why ultimately the trade union movement in this country is going to have to embrace class struggle unionism again. And with the tearing down of the post-war labor regime, these unions are not going to face that pivot. The unions are going to face that pivot whether they want to or not. Yeah. Dave from Jamaica.
And some unions seem to get it, like the IUPAT. I mean, of course, Sean Fain, I think pretty much we're all agreed that we prefer his approach than Sean O'Brien's here. I think it's possible, and I think like O'Brien's going to run out of slack pretty quick here if he keeps saying this sort of shit.
Clay Donia says, what does Josh Hawley have on Sean O'Brien? Why does he always mention him? He was on his podcast. They must be friends. I really don't know.
It's power and access. I mean, I think O'Brien made the one. I don't know what his individual politics are, but I think very outwardly they made a bet that Trump was going to win the election. And they're going to try to get what they can.
We'll get ours.
They're not going to get nothing. But yeah, exactly. Do they get anything out of it?
No.
Let's see.
Maybe they'll get favorable treatment from them, but it's cool to just like completely throw, I guess, the other workforces under the bus, according to Sean O'Brien. Like he in that interview was talking about how it's a great thing what Doge is doing, cutting waste with the federal workforce. Nice solidarity.
He even said he said cutting the fat.
Oh, cutting the fat.
Yeah.
You mean the workers? Workers?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Costello points, a welcome early move came in the form of a surprisingly pro-union nominee. That's Chavez de Reamer. But the new administration can't pursue much by way of pro-worker reform if it collapses the entire labor law architecture.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.